Leaders in government, business and society, we bear a particular responsibility to rebuild trust in how we assume our own role as trustees.
Hidden behind the lost attempt to rebuild trust for the Davos 2024 attendees' sugar-coated totalitarian strategy for world domination is a panicked roach nest of sociopaths partaking in treason, drugs, high-end prostitutes, and delusions of grandeur.
Are you worried that if all the details come out about the Epstein trial, that your boss might get into legal trouble like Prince Andrew did or some of the others on the list? It must have been bad for Melinda to divorce him over Epstein. I mean, that's what Melinda Gates said, because he wouldn't stop visiting Epstein.
He was evil personified. I had nightmares about it afterwards.
I mean, how can you work for a guy like that?
Treason, not trust, seemed to be the actual theme at this year's Davos.
We are on the way to a new order, so we are between orders. What are we able to keep on the positive side from the old order to bring into a new world order?
At the heart of it will be many of the core principles and core institutions of the existing order.
It's absolutely critical that we accelerate. I don't want this, obviously, but if you wound up with a different president who was opposed to climate crisis, I got news for you. No one politician anywhere in the world can undo what is happening now. The marketplace is doing this.
Many of these so-called righteous saviors of humanity chose to stick their nose up at the thought of addressing the peasants when confronted by journalists asking basic questions.
I want to ask about McKinsey and those huge contracts you guys got from the Canadian government after meeting with Chrystia Freeland. Oh, don't run away. Don't run away. Why don't you want to talk about your contract with Canadian taxpayers? I mean, surely you believe in transparency. What are your plans going forward?
Not going to talk about it right now here.
Are you pulling back from it the same way BlackRock is?
No. And why don't we just set this up formally? But no, we're not pulling back from it.
Are you worried about misinformation and disinformation? That's been a big focus of the World Economic Forum this year. Do you agree with that? You don't have enough credentials to go up there, apparently. But what about the forcible nature that so many people were forced to take the jab or lose their job?
Well, what I'd like to actually just say within this is that we're certainly proud of the efforts that collectively that the healthcare sector made.
Right, and I know that, and I'm not disputing that. But
I think that if you'd like to discuss any of this further, that you can certainly be in contact with our media relations group, and they'd be happy to get in touch with you on it, okay?
I don't think they would be happy to get in touch with me. I'm asking you about the forcible nature, that if they weren't forced to take your medicine against their will, they'd be fired.
I need to go on this, but what I would say is that all of this comes down to local decisions that are made by countries.
Local decisions? I think you profited by it.
Dr. Tedros, how you doing? Do you think you did well in COVID, and if you're going to do as well in disease X? What is disease X? Mr. Tedros, what is disease X? And when is China going to release it?
The number one issue that Klaus Schwab says is the goal for the WEF is to combat misinformation and disinformation. Is that important to Meta?
I'm heading to my booth. This is not an interview.
How come Facebook is censoring the internet? Is it your plan to interfere with the 2024 election?
Sorry, I'm not here to the press.
The Davos attendees of 2024 need to calm the down. The overselling of an imminent nightmare future is really pissing huge populations of Team Humanity off. What's to stop the hundreds of millions of us from holding a confab of our own aimed at arresting these proponents of a genocidal New World Order?
53 years after the WEF was founded, they have 75 million children working in their supply chains. The problem is that many of these companies have business models that have actually increased misery, hunger, malnutrition, and child labor.
The kind of person who will come into the next conservative administration is going to be governed by one principle, and that is destroying the grasp that political elites and unelected technocrats have over the average person.
We're going to change, instead of using a needle, to use a little patch. So the pandemic really highlighted that we've been underinvested in those innovations.
The meeting of the minds goes back to the ancient Greeks. when philosophers like Aristotle and Socrates used to gather in what they called agoras, a space where philosophy and business and politics were discussed amongst some of Athens' best and brightest. These meetings generated a cauldron of ideas on how to organize society and achieve happiness. But today, when the so-called brightest minds get together, it's nothing but a debaucherous insane asylum. This week, thousands of the world's most elite executives and politicians jetted off to Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum. Besides January 6th, it's their favorite day of the year. At the party, sociopaths indulge in the highest quality caviar, endless champagne, and psychedelic mushrooms. And where there's drugs, there's sex. It's the busiest week of the year for Swiss escorts, $700 an hour or $2,500 a night. Rates were much lower when Trump was president. Thank you, Bidenomics. You can almost smell the magic of the place when you're there, is how one well-connected regular describes the week. But of course, the magic isn't for everyone. It's an invite-only event. So you have to be somebody just to get through the door. And if you're in, guests are slapped with wristbands and divided by class. So once they get through the spirit names and the white shaming, Davos gets to the heart of the issue. So of course, they bring in the guy who invented the internet.
The fossil fuel polluters use a portion of their wealth from digging up dead things from the earth and burning them in ways that destroy the future of humanity. They use some of their wealth to confuse people. I get a little exercised about this because I've watched it for a long time, and it's driven by pure greed. Pure greed. If we deploy electric vehicles, solar, wind, batteries, green hydrogen, and the rest, and we get to true net zero, temperatures on the earth will stop going up almost immediately.
Gore's worth $200 million, and his greed is infinite because he's making money to save the world. The men who make money building the world, they're greedy. They should go bankrupt and be arrested for climate crimes. How'd Gore get to Davos, by the way? He didn't bicycle. And remember last year he said we'd die from rain bombs? Still waiting on the rain bombs. And once the mascot's finished, it's time to plan the future. Not their futures, your future.
That order seems to not be the order anymore. We are on the way to a new order, so we are between orders.
A new world order. So what will that look like? But the point is you have nothing to be worried about. Well, unless you like to eat.
In most of Asia, rice is still grown with traditional methods, which requires flooding the fields. And when you flood the fields, you basically kill the weeds with water, which sounds good, except it takes huge amounts of water. They basically decompose underwater, and when they do that, they release methane. And so actually rice production is one of the largest producers of methane, which is, many times more toxic in terms of greenhouse gas emissions.
Rice is like the top crop in the world. What are they going to replace it with? Lab rice. Yum. Now, so what are the farmers and the fishermen going to do? Well, they don't need jobs because they'll be arrested.
We have a kind of cultural, very ingrained habit of not taking damage to nature as seriously as we take damage to people and property. If you're campaigning for human rights, at least mass murder, torture, all of these things are serious crimes. But there's no equivalent in the environmental space. With ecocide, what we see is actually what people are trying to do, what businesses are trying to do, is make money, is farm, is fish, is do all of these things that are producing energy and so on. What's missing is the awareness and the conscience around the side effects, around the collateral damage.
Imagine you're taking your son fishing this weekend, got your lines in the water. Next thing you know, you're in handcuffs for ecocide. Those fish have constitutional rights. And if that doesn't work, we're still not at net zero, you get slapped with a carbon footprint tax.
I would say digital and sustainable need to go hand in hand. And what do I mean? Yeah, there are initiatives like we are driving as industries, Catena X, where we are trying to measure the footprint throughout the value chain. And what would that give us? Yeah, I would have a bottle like this, and I could tell you from the iron ore to the logistics to the glass, what is the carbon footprint of this bottle? And then I could price it. And I could tell you now you are doing good because you now pay 20 cents more, but you are very conscious that you have a green product. Yeah?
No, James Bond villain, no. I have a hunch their products like jets, escorts, and shrooms will be exempt from the carbon footprint tax. So forget about cheap gas, rice, and protein. You're not entitled to that. You're also not entitled to an opinion.
Disinformation is a security threat. And maybe not many noticed, but it was part of the Russian military doctrine that they will start information war. And we are in it now. And disinformation is a very powerful tool. We are focusing on improving of the system where the people will get the facts right. We don't speak about opinions. We are not correcting anyone's opinions or language. Yeah? This is about the facts.